Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to use stances for mob skills. Now I want to start off by saying thank you to everybody who's been supporting me for these video tutorials, because apparently I've been able to help you out a lot, and a lot of you have been commenting and messaging me asking, how do you do this? How would I go about setting this up? And a lot more stuff like that, either through YouTube or Discord. So I will leave my Discord in the description below for you guys to ask me anything. Thank you again for supporting me. If you have any mechanics you want covered, syntax, any sort of skills like, hey, can you make a skill that works like this and show me how you did it? Make sure to message me or comment below, and I will make sure to make videos, because many of you have asked, are you going to keep making videos for this stuff? And my answer is yes. Yes, I will. Happily. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into mob stances. Now, what are mob stances exactly? Well, think of them as flags. If most of you are familiar with stuff like World Guard, you might already be familiar with what flags are. They're basically just little things saying, you know, this is the case, this is what is being fired right now, so do this. So let's go ahead and get started and set it up. Right now, I have a basic mob file right here. It's just a normal zombie named stance test. I have its movement speed, drops, and equipment disabled. This is entirely up to you, but for my sake, I just went ahead and did that, and I set it to silent so he isn't groaning at how many times I've had to do this video over just to show you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the setting of the stances here. Now, in case any of you are wondering what this string is, this just means that he is not going to go anywhere when I hurt him. He will get knocked back slightly, but however, as you can see, he kind of stops himself midair. Oops, I killed him. Okay, so let's go and respawn him here. Basically, if you have a knockback sword or a bow with like punch 5 on it, or whatever the highest enchantment is, I only make mobs, I do not mess with items, it will make it to where no matter what they get hit by, no matter the amount of knockback, they will always just kind of stop. This is very handy. I recommend using it for bosses and heavy hitting mobs, so that way players cannot camp and just hide in one specific spot to avoid fighting. Now let's go ahead and get into the actual stances themselves. So we're going to start off here with, we're just going to start off with the setting. So set stance equals, we're just going to go and close it off here so that way I can duplicate the rest of this. I'm using Control D, Command D if you're on a Mac. Whoops, I pressed F there. So what's really cool with stances, you can have unlimited amounts of stances for a mob. I do recommend limiting yourself to at least 4 to 5, maybe even less, so that way you don't get overwhelmed and forget what stance there is, because at some point on the mob, you will have to make it switch stances, and I will show you an alternative way to do that later, so that way you can just make it as smooth and easy flowing as you want. So, but let's go ahead and start off with the basics. We're going to make our first one defensive. We're going to make him be defensive on damage, so whenever he gets hurt. Set stance offensive, so whenever he does damage to an entity, we are going to make him do this on attack. And set stance hybrid on interact. Now, I don't recommend ever using this trigger for an offensive mob, because let's be real, if your mob is trying to kill your players are going to be trying to kill your mob as well. This only exists for the sole purpose of example in this video, just to show you the distinct differences between stances, and just to, the fact that they work. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, there is no string to this whatsoever, or no defined presets. Your stance can literally be whatever you want to call it. You want to just jumble a bunch of letters? That's a stance now. Congratulations. I hope you can remember that long string. Mine ended with "we buy," so you know, hey. But for the sake of this video, we're gonna stick to defensive. So once we have those set up, we're gonna need our actual skills themselves. So we're gonna start off here, offensive, defensive. I am aware that I just did this out of order, but I am not going to switch it because you can use context clues to follow along. So we have our set stances set up. Now let's get our skills set up. Skill S equals offensive stance itself on timer 5. Now, if you're making a mob use actual skills for this, I recommend making them wait anywhere from 10 to 15 seconds, maybe even 20 depending. I'm using mine every quarter of a second because mine is going to be strictly particle effects, just to show you guys the obvious differences between the stances. So let's go ahead and let me go ahead and finish this, because this is going to be the last thing we do in this file. Okay, so now that that is set up, we are going to go into our skills. So you can go ahead and save this. One thing I recommend doing is just copy pasting the name of your skill in this file and just pasting it over into this one. Conditions. This is very important. Stance S equals offensive. In case you're a little worrywart like I am sometimes, I recommend copying and pasting your stance here into your stance over here, just to make sure everything is spelled the same and spelled correctly. The big reason for this is because if I have a different offensive stance here, and this one's a lowercase o, these are actually two different stances, even though they are the same name. This is because capitalization does matter. Everything is case sensitive, so always make sure to copy and paste your stance string over to your main file, or vice versa, whichever way you choose to do so, just to ensure that it will work the first time. So we're going to go ahead and go into our skills, and we are going to do a particle ring. Particle equals red dust because it's colorable, so I can show you the differences here. This is the offensive stance, so we're going to go ahead and make it red, because if you are offensive, you are angry. One thing I learned, you cannot shorthand the particle ring effect. You have to spell everything out or it will not work. So points equals 16, radius equals 2. Y is the only one you can because Y is Y. There's no full word for it, it's literally just Y coordinate, or Y value. Now, this one is important too. This seems to be a bug with red dust particle and no other particles. Whatever your amount is set to, it has to be equal to how many points you have in the ring. If it is lower, then it will not render in and the effect will not fire. I'm not sure if this is a bug with red dust or if that's just how the particle itself works, because if this were, say, flame or cloud or something, I could set this to 1 and it would work perfectly fine. However, since it is red dust, the amount has to be equal to the amount of points in your ring. Very important to remember, the more you know. So let's go ahead and quickly, I'm just going to go ahead and copy paste this. Actually, we're going to duplicate it, Control or Command D, and now let's go ahead and switch it. Defensive stance, defensive. I'm confident in my typing abilities, so I will not be copy pasting. However, I still recommend you do so anyway, because odds are something may not work by the time I get to showcasing this. So hybrid and 0000FF. So I have defensive set to green and hybrid set to blue. Now, as you can see, it's going to be trying to activate them all. However, it has to be in a certain stance, which I almost forgot. Make sure you set this to true, because otherwise it will not make a difference. As I was saying, it has to be a specific stance in order to use a specific ability. So if your mob is offensive, these two will not fire because hybrid and defensive will be false for the mob, while offensive will be true. So there's that short description for you. Let's go ahead and give him a test here. He's not going to be doing anything because we haven't activated him yet. So I'm going to let him hit me, and I'm in God mode. That makes a difference. He has to actually hurt an entity. Look at that. So now you can tell that he is in offensive stance. If I hit him, he is now in defensive stance as the particles turned green, and as I right click him, he is now in hybrid stance. So as you can see, there's different triggers, and you can tell which stance he's in depending on, you know, color or however you choose to set it up. So let's go ahead and show you guys now how you can make a mob that flows smoothly and just kind of automatically operates on his own. What we're gonna do, we're gonna go back into our main file here, and I'm gonna put it above this hashtag line. What we're gonna have to do after doing this, random skills, set defensive, set offensive, and set hybrid. Now instead of having these in his main mob file, we are going to have to put these inside the skill file instead. So I'm going to go ahead and copy them for now while I finish this part up. I'm going to go ahead and put it on a timer of 60. Just because that's every 3 seconds. One thing important to remember, if you use this random skill, the first thing, skill right here, unlike down here where you can just put S, it has to be skills, S-K-I-L-L-S, with the S at the end of it. Next, you can have as many skills in here as you want. Now, you do have to separate them with a comma because it reads this all as one string, unlike in other things like right here where you use a semicolon because it's different variables. This is all the same string, so make sure you are using commas. Now if you wanted to have a skill be used or be more likely to be used, all you really have to do is just go ahead and set another thing in there. So now it has a 50% chance to use set defensive, 25 for offensive, 25 for hybrid. It's still random, so know that it will, you know, there's no actual guarantee it'll work that way. It just means the odds of using this skill are greater. But we're going to go ahead and get rid of that for now. And now we have these going. So we still have our skills copied. Let's paste them in right here. Now we said set defensive was one skill. Conditions, you don't need to do it that way, but I like to anyway. I'm not going to for now. Set offensive. Conditions, it's just a good habit to have. There's also a cooldown thing, but last time I tried to use it, I ended up messing up the syntax, and it took me forever just to figure out what I did wrong, and I had to restart the video, so I'm not going to do that this time. Set hybrid. Conditions, skills. Now, once you do that, make sure to remove the triggers back here. They are no longer relevant, and they may even cause things to go wrong if you decide to change something. So now we have these skills set up, set defensive, set offensive, set hybrid, and here is where he is doing it automatically on his own. You will no longer need to have these active, so instead of deleting them, I am just going to put a hashtag in front of them to disable them. And we did not mess with the actual skills themselves down here. So let's go ahead and check it out. As you can see, he's automatically changing his stance on his own every 3 seconds. Sometimes his stance will not change, hence why the screen has lasted longer. That actually lasted 3 counts there. I'm quite surprised. And I'm going to show you guys how you can fix that. What you can do in the conditions, set it to where their stance is false. So we're going to copy this because this is defensive. Instead of it being set to true, we're going to set it to false. This means if he's already in his defensive stance, he will not be able to use this skill again, and he will resort to his next one. So if we go ahead and copy that into this, and make sure you set the strings to false. There we go. This will prevent him from using the same stance over and over again. As you can see, it'll change. Sometimes it might go red, blue, red, green, blue, green, blue, red, blue, etc. You know, and I'm sure that's okay with most players. If it is not okay, then you can you can add a cooldown timer to them. However, I will not be messing with that for the sake of this tutorial. And as you can see, he's switching his stance every 3 seconds, and he is not replicating the same stance twice in a row. I hope this has helped you guys a bunch. Do know that you can make as many skills in a stance as you want. Always use random skill for that, so that way you can have 3 skills going on inside the defensive, offensive, or hybrid stances. I don't remember if I said if you use random skill, I highly recommend anywhere from 10 to 15 seconds so it doesn't just bombard your players, unless of course that is what you're going for. I am not. So that is the mob stances. I will show you guys how to do that again via score in the future. However, for now, this is all I have to show for you today. I hope this inspires you guys and helps you into creating more powerful, scary, and awesome mobs. If there's anything else you want to see covered in a video, make sure to comment, message me on Discord, message me on YouTube, whatever. Thank you guys so much for your support and for watching. I hope you make some awesome creations.